Okay, while that's launching, I'm going to open up, let's see. So from your documents area, or you can click on Finder, the little happy guy on the dock. To get to your documents area, you just make sure you highlight documents area. I'm in column view, so I'm just single clicking documents area, and now I'm gonna single click on my folder for this class, and I should have my, let's see, my week 1 landscape folder in there, and the landscape instructions are there, and there's this other handout I want to look at called Raster versus Vector, so we just can get an idea of the differences between raster images and vector images. This is actually an example of an assignment that I gave my Photoshop class at the other school where I also teach at. I teach at Orange Coast College, and I teach a Photoshop section of the class there. And so we had some fun with pixels, with taking apart photographs and recreating, like taking parts of photographs and rearranging them and making them into our own images. So this was a clever image, right? The zebra ironing his coat. Notice one of these images is higher resolution than the other. Can you tell which one is higher, which one is lower, and which one is higher? Left, yeah, left is lower. You can see the pixelation because this image is zoomed in a little bit. As I zoom in more, you can really see those pixels because the pixels are bigger on the image on the left. This image is rasterized at 72 pixels per inch. The one on the right is higher resolution. It's 300 pixels per inch, so it'll take longer when as I'm zooming in until I see the pixels, as opposed to this one over here. You really start to see those pixels right away. They are really chunky pixels on this image versus this other image here. The pixels are finer. That means there's more detail, more data. The image takes up more space. But as I'm zooming in, see, I'm zooming into went to the wrong. Let me get to the right page. Okay, so as I'm zooming in 400, zooming in 600, then you can start to see pixels, 800, but the pixels are much finer, 1200, 1600. Now you can see the pixels on this one. Just imagine the other one at 1600. So the 72 pixels per inch at 1600, the pixels are going to be gigantic boxes. So that's what happens when you are working with an image that is a raster image, also known as a bitmap image. If you wanted to scale it up, you're going to start to see pixels. And raster images are images made of pixels, which are bits of data that are mapped to a grid of rows and columns. And raster images are resolution dependent. Fewer or larger pixels per inch equals less data equals less detail. More or smaller pixels per inch equals more data equals more detail. So the more pixels, the higher the quality, but that also means the larger the file size. And the images that are raster are typically the ones that you see on the web, embedded in web pages. Those used to be, before Adobe Muse, that was the only way to get an image on. Like if you started with a vector image, you would always have to rasterize it in order to put it on the web. So what are some file types? You should be familiar with some raster file types, right? Like, you guys know TIFFs, PNGs, JPEGs. Those are JPEGs, PNGs are the ones you see on the web these days. Anyone know any other examples? What else? Did someone say GIF? All right. Did someone say bitmap, BMP? Those are other file types. TIFF is usually one that you would if you're scanning something, you would choose a TIFF as the file type because it's uncompressed. Okay, but anyway, moving on, vector-based artwork. So over here on this side, I put in some vector-based artwork. You can place vector artwork inside of a PDF. It will retain its quality. So when I zoom in on the vector artwork, it's always going to update, and I'm never going to see pixels in this vector artwork because vector artwork is based on a mathematical formula, placement of points in space. And as you are scaling up artwork that's vector based, the point placement is just recalculated, and the art will just, everything just recalculates and remains pristine and clean. So I can keep zooming in, and you will never see pixels. Everything stays sharp and clean, right? The only thing is, like, the effects will kind of have a grid kind of look, like there's, with vector artwork, the underlying structure is called a path. And a path is made up of points, which we call anchor points in Illustrator, and line segments, and that's what gives the artwork its structure. Then you design the artwork with what we call fills, like the fill color, like this would be like a red fill color, or on these shapes here, yellow would be the interior color, the fill color, and the outline we call stroke. Then on top of that, you have choices like you can put gradient. What's a gradient? You can choose to make a gradient on your shapes, like what's in the sun, where colors are blending into colors, or the sky background is like a linear gradient where the colors like darker blue and getting lighter, where colors blend in a linear way, versus radial gradient. And then you can also put effects. You see any effects on any of this artwork here on the side? Drop shadow would be an effect, or this would be a glowing effect on the flower. So we're going to get to do all that fun stuff with designing the shapes, and then adding the color, fill, gradient, and then adding effects, adding outlines. That would be a stroke. So all those terms might be new, probably new to a lot of you. But we're going to start to get those down. And these are just examples of what the underlying structure looks like, the paths. So the shaping, you have all different choices for how you shape your gradients. You can have straight lines meeting at corners, straight line meeting at a corner, and then meeting at a curve from there. When you have curves, anytime you have curved lines, you have handles that control the curves. These are called Bezier curves. Curves that on vectors that have handles to control the shape of the curve. We call those Bezier curves. So path is an underlying structure of your vector, like the skeleton, and then you add, and you don't really see, the path isn't something that you see in the artwork. It's there for you to control the shape. You can see it in Illustrator, but then when you go to print or put your artwork online on the web, you're not going to see the paths anymore. They're invisible once the artwork is in its final form. Like I said, vectors are created by mathematical formulas. As the points are rearranged, the mathematical data is recalculated and the path is updated. So that makes vectors resolution independent. So like I said, that's what's beautiful about that. You can create a logo that's really small for a business card, and then that business gets huge. They really take off. They're ready for their billboard. You can blow that logo up to billboard size and never lose resolution. Never see pixels. Always see clean artwork, clean lines, clean shape. Okay, so vector data is preserved in PDF files or in the native files of vector generator software such as Adobe Illustrator or InDesign. Also, another file type of that retains vector data is the SVG file type. I should list that there too. These are just an overview of vector tools. I'm going to give you better handouts later because these are the icons that Illustrator used to use. They don't use their icons are a little different looking now, but that's just an overview of some very important vector tools we're going to be talking about today. Pen tool, that's one of the most important tools in vector graphics and in Illustrator, so we're going to be mastering that tool in this quarter, during this quarter. So that's all there for you, that handout. I'm going to close it for now, and let's dive right in and try out our landscape. So maybe I will